Hi, it's Sophie Grace, and today I'm going to be reading you Kristy's Great Idea, the first book of the Babysitter's Club by Anne M. Martin. I grew up with these books, and I love them so much, and I hope you love it too. Chapter 1, The Babysitter's Club. I'm proud to say it was totally my idea, even though the four of us worked it out together. Us being Marianne Spear, Claudia Kishi, Stacy McGill, and me, Kristy Thomas. I got the idea on the first Tuesday afternoon of 7th grade. It was a very hot day. So hot that in my unair-conditioned school, Stony Brook Middle School, the teachers had opened every single window and door and turned off all the lights. My hair stuck damply to the back of my neck, and I wished I had a rubber band so I could pull it into a long ponytail. Bees flew around the classroom and droned around our heads. And Mr. Redmond, our teacher, let us stop working to make fans out of construction paper. The fans didn't do much except keep the bees away, but it was nice to take 10 minutes out of social studies to make them. Anyway, that stifling afternoon dragged on forever, and when the hands on the clock of the front wall of our classroom finally hit 2:42 and the bell rang, I leaped on my seat and shouted, "Hooray!" I was just so excited that it was time to get out of there. I like school and everything, but sometimes enough is enough. Mr. Redmond looked shocked. He was probably thinking he had just been so nice letting us make those fans, and there I was, not appreciating it at all. I was just so glad the day was over. I felt bad, but I couldn't help what I'd done. I'm like that. I think of something to say, and I say it. I think of something to do, and I do it. My mom calls it impulse. Sometimes she calls it trouble. But she doesn't just mean trouble. She means trouble. And I was in trouble. I could sense it. I've been in enough trouble to know when it's coming. Mr. Redmond cleared his throat. He was trying to think of a way to punish me without humiliating me in front of the other kids. Things that are important to him. Kristy, Mr. Redmond began, and then he changed his mind and started over. Class, he said. You have your homework assignments. You may go. Kristy, I'd like to see you for a minute. While the rest of the kids gathered their books and papers and left the room, talking and giggling, I made my way to Mr. Redmond's desk. Before he could say a word, I began apologizing to him. Mr. Redmond, I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean anything. I didn't mean I was glad school was over. I was just glad I got to go home, because my home is air-conditioned. Mr. Redmond nodded. But do you think, Kristy, it would be possible in the future to conduct yourself with a bit more decorum? I wasn't sure the exact meaning of decorum, but I had a pretty good idea it meant not spoiling Mr. Redmond's day by jumping up and shouting hooray when the bell rang. Yes, sir, I said. Sometimes being polite also helps. Good, said Mr. Redmond, but I want you to remember this incident, and the best way for us to remember things is to write them down. So tonight, I would like you to write a 100-word essay on the importance of decorum in the classroom. Darn, I was going to have to find out what decorum meant after all. Yes, sir, I said again. I went back to my desk, gathered my books very slowly, and walked out of the classroom very slowly. I hope Mr. Redmond noticed the slowness because I was betting it was an important part of decorum. I found Marianne Spear waiting for me outside the door to the classroom. She was leaning against the wall, biting her nails. Marianne is my best friend. We live right next door to each other. We even look a little alike. We're both small for our age, and we both have brown hair that falls right below our shoulders. But that's where the similarity ends, because I can't keep my mouth shut, and Marianne is very quiet and very shy. Luckily, that's only on the outside. The people that know her well, like Claudia and Stacy and me, get to see the inside of her. And the Marianne who's hiding in there is a lot of fun. Hey, I greeted her. I pulled her hands out of her mouth and looked at her nails. Marianne, how do you expect to ever wear nail polish if you keep doing that? Oh, come on, Marianne said with a sigh. Nail polish? I'll be 75 before my dad lets me wear that. Marianne's father is the only family she's got. Her mother is dead and she has no brothers or sisters. Unfortunately, her father is pretty strict. My mother says it's just because Mr. Spear is so nervous since Marianne's all he's got. You'd think, though, that he would let her wear her hair down instead of always in braids, or let her ride her bike to the mall with Claudia and I once in a while. But no. In Mr. Spear's house, it's rules, rules, rules. It's a miracle Marianne's even allowed to be a part of the Babysitter's Club. We walked out of school, and suddenly, I began running. I'd forgotten all about decorum because I had remembered something else. "Oh my gosh," I cried. Marianne raced after me. "What is it?" she panted. "It's Tuesday," I called over my shoulder. "So, slow down, Kristy. It's too hot to run." "I can't slow down. Tuesday is my afternoon to watch David Michael. I'm supposed to be him home. Otherwise, he's going to have to watch himself." David Michael is my 6-year-old brother. My big brothers, Charlie and Sam, and I are each responsible for him one afternoon a week until my mom gets home from work. Kathy, this 15-year-old that lives a few blocks away from us, watches him the other 2 afternoons. Kathy gets paid to watch him. Charlie and Sam and I do not. Marianne and I ran all the way home. We reached my front yard, sweaty and out of breath, and there was David Michael sitting lonely on the front steps, his dark curls limply across his forehead. "What's wrong?" I asked. I sat down beside him and put my arm around his shoulders. "I'm locked out," he wailed. "What happened to your key?" David Michael shook his head. "I don't know." He wiped his eyes, hiccuping. "Well," I said, "it's all right. I got my own key out of my purse." David Michael burst into fresh tears. No, it's not all right. I couldn't get in and I have to use the bathroom." I unlocked the door. When David Michael gets like this, it's best to just ignore his tears and pretend everything's fine. Marianne and I held the door for him, and I ushered him to the bathroom. Our collie, Louie, tore outside as we went in. He was frantic to get outdoors because he had been locked inside the house since breakfast time. "While you go to the bathroom," I told David Michael, "I'm going to fix us some lemonade, okay?" David Michael actually smiled. "Okay." I'm good with children. So is Marianne. My mom says so. Both of us get lots of afternoon and weekend babysitting jobs. In fact, I'd been offered a job that afternoon, but I had to turn it down because of David Michael. That reminded me. "Hey," I said to Marianne as I turned on the air conditioning. "Mrs. Newton asked me to babysit Jamie this afternoon. Did she call you after she called me?" Marianne sat down at the kitchen table and watched me pour lemonade mix into a big glass pitcher. She shook her head. "No, maybe she called Claudia. Claudia Kishi lives across the street from me. She and Marianne and I have lived on Bradford Court since we were born. We've grown up together, but somehow Claudia's never spent as much time with Marianne and I as we've spent together. For one thing, Claudia's really into art and is always off to art classes, or else holed up in her room painting or drawing, or reading mysteries. That's her other passion. She's much more grown up than Marianne and I. When we were little, Marianne and I were always playing school or dolls or dress up, but we practically had to brainwash Claudia to join us. A lot of the time, we just didn't bother. But Claude's always been good for a bike ride or going to the movies or the community pool. As far as I'm concerned, the best thing about Claudia is that her father isn't Mr. Spear. Mr. Kishi can be strict about Claudia's schoolwork, but he doesn't faint when you suggest going downtown for a Coke or something. Over the summer, it had started to feel like Claudia was drifting apart from Marianne and me. Even though we were all going to 7th grade, Claudia just seemed older. She started caring about boys, and she spent more time than usual adding to her wardrobe or talking on the phone. We'd all made up at the end of the summer, but it still felt like we were going in different directions sometimes. David Michael came into the kitchen looking much cheerier. "Here you go," I said. I handed him a glass of lemonade as he sat down next to Marianne. Charlie then came in, tossing a football around. Sam got home a few minutes later with Louie skidding along behind him. Charlie is 16 and Sam is 14. They both go to Stony Brook High. Sam's a freshman this year and Charlie's a junior. "Hi, everybody." "Hi, Squirt," Charlie said to David Michael. "I'm not a squirt," replied David Michael. Charlie thought he was so great because he had just made the varsity team. You'd think he was the first person ever to play football for Stony Brook High. "We're going to play ball in the Hansons' backyard," Sam announced. "Want to play, Kristy?" I did, but David Michael wouldn't want to. He was too little. "I don't know. I thought Marianne and I could take David Michael to the brook." "You want to go wadding, David Michael?" I asked. He nodded happily. "See you guys later," I called as Sam and Charlie left the house, slamming the front door behind them. Marianne and I took David Michael and Louie to the brook. We watched David Michael wade and make sailboats and try to catch minnows. Louie ran around looking for squirrels. "I'd better go," Marianne said after an hour or so. "Dad will be home soon." "Yeah, Mom will be home soon too." "David Michael," I called. "Time to leave." He stood up reluctantly, and the 3 of us and Louie walked home together. When we reached our driveway, David Michael ran across the lawn, and Marianne whispered to me, 9 o'clock, okay? I grinned. Okay, Marianne and I have a secret code. Marianne made it up. We can signal each other with flashlights. If I look out my bedroom window, I can see directly into hers. Lots of nights we talk with our flashlights, since Marianne isn't allowed on her phone past dinner, except for things like babysitting jobs or getting homework assignments. When Mom came home a little while later, she had pizza with her. My brothers and I stood around the kitchen, breathing in the smell of cheese and pepperoni. But Sam and Charlie looked spectacled. I wonder what she wants, murmured Sam. Yeah, said Charlie. Mom only gets pizza when she has to ask us a favor. I decided not to beat around the bush. How come you got pizza, Mom? I asked. Charlie kicked my ankle, but I ignored him. Come on, what do you have to ask us? Mom grinned. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew that we knew it too. Oh, all right, she said. Kathy called me at work to say she won't be able to watch David Michael tomorrow. I was wondering what you guys are... Football practice, said Charlie promptly. Math club, said Sam. Sitting the Newtons, I said. Drat, said Mom. But we are sorry, added Sam. I know you are. Then we dug into the pizza while Mom started making phone calls. She called Marianne. Marianne was sitting the pike. She called Claudia. Claudia had an art class. She called 2 high school girls, but they had cheerleading practice. Finally, Mom called Mrs. Newton and asked if she would mind if I brought David Michael with me when I sat for Jamie. Luckily, Mrs. Newton didn't mind. I chewed away at my globby mouthful of cheese and pepperoni, but I thought it was too bad that Mom's pizza had to get cold. I also thought it was too bad that David Michael had to sit there and feel like he was causing all this trouble just because he was 6 and couldn't take care of himself. Then the idea for the Babysitters Club came to me, and I almost choked. I could barely wait till 9 o'clock so I could signal it to Marianne. Thank you so much for listening. That was Chapter 1 of Kristy's Great Idea. Tune in tomorrow for Chapter 2. Bye.